The invitation arrived in a cream envelope, my mother's looping handwriting spelling out my name with practiced elegance. I hadn't heard from her in months, and now this, an invitation to celebrate her marriage to a man I'd never met. I'm Reagan, and this is where everything started to unravel. The paper trembled in my hands as I read it again. Join us in celebrating the union of Elizabeth Marie Collins and Gregory James Mitchell. No warning, no discussion, just a formal announcement of a life-changing decision that apparently didn't require my input. You going to open a hole in that thing? My father's voice carried from the kitchen. He was making his signature Sunday pancakes, the smell of butter and maple syrup filling our small apartment. Mom got married. The words felt foreign on my tongue. She didn't even tell me she was dating anyone. Dad's spatula clattered against the stovetop. When? 2 weeks ago. I walked into the kitchen holding up the invitation. There's a family dinner tonight. To meet everyone. He wiped his hands on his apron, the one I'd given him for Christmas with "World's Okayest Cook" printed across it. You okay, kiddo? Fantastic. My mother gets married in secret, and now I'm supposed to play happy families with complete strangers. I dropped into a chair. He has a daughter, 15. Her name's Maddie. Beth always did like to avoid confrontation. Dad flipped a pancake with practiced ease. Remember when she told you about the divorce? Left me a note and took you to Disney World for a week. Yeah, well, this time she can't distract me with Space Mountain. My phone buzzed. Mom's face lit up the screen. A photo from 3 years ago, both of us smiling at some restaurant I couldn't remember. Reagan, honey, did you get the invitation? 2 weeks, Mom, really? I know, but everything happened so fast and Greg is just wonderful. You'll love him. Her voice had that familiar pleading tone. And Maddie is so excited to meet you. Please come tonight. It would mean everything to me. I caught Dad's eye. He gave me that look, the one that said I was old enough to make my own choices. What time? 7. Greg's making his famous lasagna. She paused. Wear something nice? The line went dead before I could respond. Classic Mom. Drop a bomb and retreat before the fallout. I spent the afternoon trying on outfits, each one feeling wrong for different reasons. Too casual, too formal, too much like something Mum would wear. Finally, I settled on a black dress that Grandmother Alice had helped me pick out last Christmas. The address led me to a house in the suburbs, all perfect lawn and gleaming windows. Through the glass, I could see them. Mom, a tall man with graying temples who must be Greg, and a teenage girl with carefully straightened hair. They looked like a stock photo family, positions already set, roles already defined. My hand hovered over the doorbell. Behind me, a car door slammed, making me jump. You must be Reagan. The voice was smooth, practiced. Greg stood at the bottom of the porch steps, grocery bags in his arms. Beth's told me so much about you. Funny, she's told me nothing about you. His smile flickered for just a moment. Well, we'll have to fix that, won't we? Here, help me with these bags. As I reached for a bag, I heard him mutter under his breath. At least you showed up. That's more than I expected from what Beth told me. The words hit like ice water. I followed him inside, where Mum rushed forward to hug me, her perfume too strong, her smile too bright. Behind her, Maddie watched with calculating eyes, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. Welcome to the family, she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I stood in their perfect foyer, surrounded by family photos that didn't include me, and knew with absolute certainty that this dinner was going to be the beginning of something I couldn't stop. Something that would change everything. And I was right. 3 weeks after the disastrous dinner, Mom insisted I join them for Sunday brunch. The restaurant was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and overpriced avocado toast. I watched Maddie methodically shred her napkin into tiny pieces, letting them fall onto my purse. Stop that, I said. She blinked at me with practiced innocence. Stop what? Mom reached across the table, brushing the paper bits away. Girls, please, can't we have one nice meal together? Of course we can, Beth, Greg said, his hand covering Mom's. We're all family now. He turned to me. Reagan, how's the job hunt going? Still, between opportunities. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I have interviews lined up. At your age, I was already assistant manager at the firm. He smiled, all teeth. But everyone moves at their own pace, I suppose. Mom nodded enthusiastically. Greg's been so successful. He's offering to help you with your resume, sweetheart. I don't need... Oh my God, Maddie interrupted, pointing at my purse. Is that coffee? There's coffee all over your bag. I looked down. Dark liquid was indeed spreading across my cream-colored leather purse, my grandmother's birthday gift to me last year. Maddie's half-empty cup sat suspiciously close to the edge of the table. It must have tipped when I reached for the sugar, she said, but I caught the slight upturn of her lips. That was deliberate. The words came out sharper than I intended. Greg's face hardened. Now wait just a minute. Are you accusing my daughter? Reagan, Mum cut in. It was clearly an accident. Don't make a scene. I stood up, grabbing napkins to salvage what I could of the purse. Right, because heaven forbid we acknowledge what's actually happening here. What's happening, Greg said, is that you're being paranoid and hostile toward a 15-year-old girl who's trying her best to welcome you into our family. Our family. The words hit like a slap. I already have a family. Mom's face crumpled. Honey, please sit down. People are staring. Let them stare. I grabbed my ruined purse. You know what? I'm done pretending this is working. As I turned to leave, I heard Maddie's theatrical whisper. I told you she'd be like this, Dad, just like you said. The walk home was a blur of anger and hurt. When I reached the apartment, Dad was at the kitchen table with grandmother Alice, playing their weekly game of gin rummy. Back so soon? Alice asked, then saw my face. Oh dear. I dropped the stained purse on the table. I'm sorry, Grandma. Maddie accidentally spilled coffee all over it. She examined the damage, her lined face thoughtful. Things rarely happen by accident with people like that, my dear. Beth's letting them walk all over Reagan, Dad said, shuffling the cards with more force than necessary. I just don't understand why Mum can't see what they're doing. I sank into a chair. It's like she's completely blind when it comes to them. Your mother's always needed someone to tell her who she is, Alice said, laying down her cards. First it was her parents, then your father. No offense, Tom. And now it's Greg. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. I wish you'd try harder to make this work. Greg and Maddie are my family too now. Another message followed. Coming over tomorrow to drop off some of your old things from the house. Greg needs the space for his home office. The casual dismissal in those words made something snap inside me. I typed back, don't bother. I don't want anything from that house anymore. Reagan, Dad started, but I was already heading to my room. I know. Take the high road. Actually, he said, I was going to say sometimes the high road is overrated. I turned back, surprised. Alice nodded. There's a difference between being petty and standing up for yourself, dear. Your mother needs to understand that her choices have consequences. My phone buzzed again. Mom, asking me to reconsider, to give them another chance. But as I stood there, looking at my grandmother's ruined gift and thinking about Greg's smug smile, I knew something had to change, and it wouldn't be me. The morning of my interview with Innovate Techs, I found my navy blazer crumpled in a wet heap on Mom's kitchen floor. Red wine soaked through the fabric, leaving dark stains that reeked of expensive Merlot. Oh no, Maddie gasped from the doorway, hand over her mouth. I was just trying to help by doing your laundry. I must have mixed up the loads. I stared at the ruined suit, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy. You don't even live here. I stayed over last night. She twirled her hair, a habit I'd grown to hate. Dad says I should try to bond with you more. Mom rushed in, still in her robe. What's going... Oh dear. This was deliberate. My voice shook. The interview is in 2 hours. Don't be ridiculous, Greg called from the living room. Maddie was being thoughtful. Unlike some people, She actually tries to contribute to this household. I picked up the blazer, wine dripping onto the tiles. Mom, are you seriously not going to say anything? She wrung her hands, looking between Greg and me. Accidents happen, honey. Maybe you can borrow something of mine. Nothing of yours fits me. The words came out harsh, loaded with years of unspoken tension. Mom flinched. Greg appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. Your mother's trying to help. The least you could do is show some gratitude. Gratitude? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. For what? For watching her let you two systematically destroy everything that matters to me? That's enough. Greg set down his mug. Beth, I think it's time we discussed Reagan's living situation. This hostility toward Maddie needs to stop. Mom nodded, not meeting my eyes. Maybe some space would be good for everyone. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You're kicking me out? We're suggesting, Greg said, putting his arm around Mom, that it might be better if you stayed with your father full time. This clearly isn't working. Maddie smiled, small and victorious behind them. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling as I dialed. Dad, can you come get me? Now? His voice was thick with sleep. Please. 20 minutes later, his old Volvo pulled into the driveway. I was already outside, sitting on the steps with my ruined blazer in a plastic bag. What happened? He took in my tear-streaked face. They want me gone. The words caught in my throat. Mom's choosing them. Again. The front door opened. Mom stood there, still in her robe, mascara smudged under her eyes. Reagan, please. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I stood up, legs unsteady. You've made your choice pretty clear. That's not fair. Fair? Dad's voice cut through the morning air. Was it fair when you left that note and took her to Disney World instead of facing me? Was it fair when you got married without telling her? Is it fair now, watching your husband and his daughter tear her down while you do nothing? Mom stepped back like she'd been slapped. Tom, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. He picked up my bag. Come on, kiddo. We're going home. In the car, I watched Mom's house disappear in the side mirror. Greg and Maddie stood in the window, twin expressions of satisfaction on their faces. The interview, I said suddenly. I can't go like this. Dad checked his watch. Call your grandmother. She's still got that boutique connection from her retail days. We've got time. An hour later, I stood in Alice's living room, wearing a borrowed charcoal grey suit that fit perfectly. She adjusted the collar, her fingers gentle. Sometimes, she said, the best revenge is simply refusing to break. I thought about Mum's silence, Greg's smug authority, Maddie's calculated innocence. I'm done trying to fit into their family. Good. Alice stepped back, examining her handiwork. Now go show them what real strength looks like. I walked into Innovatex, wearing armor made of borrowed clothes and newfound resolve. The interviewer smiled, impressed by my answers about overcoming challenges and adapting to change. I got the job. That night, I deleted Mom's number from my phone. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding, especially when the other side is holding matches. A month into my job at Innovatex, Mom's texts started arriving daily. Each one more desperate than the last, begging me to answer her calls. I deleted them all until one caught my eye. Going through old photos, found something you should see. Attached was a picture of a document, Dad's signature at the bottom, dated 15 years ago. A custody agreement I'd never seen before, giving Mum full custody while limiting Dad's visitation rights. My hand shook as I dialed his number. Did you try to keep me from Mom when I was 7? The silence on the other end stretched too long. Where did you get that? Mom sent it. Is it real? He sighed. Reagan, it's complicated. Is it real? Yes. His voice cracked, but not the way she's making it seem. I was in a bad place after the divorce. Your mother threatened to move across the country with you unless I signed. The office walls seemed to close in. I grabbed my coat, ignoring concerned looks from co-workers as I rushed out. Grandmother Alice opened her door before I could knock. Your father called. Come in before you freeze. I thrust my phone at her, the document still displayed. Did you know about this? She studied it, lips pressed thin. I knew Beth had leverage over Tom back then. I didn't know the details. She handed the phone back. The question is, why is she showing you this now? Because she's losing control. The realization hit as I spoke. She can't manipulate me like she used to, so she's trying to turn me against Dad instead. My phone buzzed, another text from Mom. There's more you don't know. Come home and we can talk. Home. As if that house with Greg and Maddie was still my home. Alice touched my arm. Whatever you're thinking of doing, sleep on it first. But I was already heading for the door. I need answers. The drive to Mom's house took 20 minutes, each minute filled with memories being rewritten, childhood moments viewed through a new, darker lens. Greg answered the door, his surprise quickly masked by that practiced smile. Reagan. What a pleasant... I pushed past him. Where's Mom? Now wait just a minute. It's okay, Greg. Mom appeared from the kitchen, Maddie hovering behind her. I knew she'd come. You manipulated Dad into signing away his rights. The words tasted like acid. I did what I had to do to protect you. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Your father was drinking then, missing work. For 3 months, after you left him with a note and took me to Disney World. See? Greg cut in. This is exactly the kind of unstable behavior. Shut up. I turned to Mom. You're still doing it, using people's worst moments against them, twisting everything to make yourself look like the victim. Reagan, please. Her eyes welled up. I only wanted... control. You wanted control. I pulled out my phone, showing her recent texts. And now that you can't control me anymore, you're trying to destroy my relationship with Dad instead. Maddie snickered from the kitchen doorway. Guess the perfect daughter isn't so perfect after all. Something snapped. You want to know what's not perfect, Maddie? The way you and your father manipulated your way into this family. The way you deliberately sabotage everything I care about while playing innocent. The way Mom lets you do it because she's too scared of being alone. That's enough. Greg stepped forward, but I held my ground. No, it's not enough, because I'm done. Done with the mind games, done with the gaslighting, done with all of it. I turned to Mom. Congratulations. You finally succeeded in pushing me away completely. Don't you dare speak to your mother that way, Greg started, but I was already walking out. She stopped being my mother the moment she chose your manipulation over my truth. Behind me, I heard Mom calling my name, her voice breaking. Part of me wanted to turn back, to give her one more chance. But as I drove away, I remembered what Alice said about bridges and matches. Some fires need to burn themselves out before anything new can grow. 6 months at InnovateX changed everything. Each promotion felt like a quiet victory. Each bonus a step closer to freedom. The day I qualified for a mortgage, I didn't tell anyone except Dad and Alice. Some celebrations are better kept private. Then I saw the listing. A craftsman house with blue shutters, 3 blocks from where Mom and I used to live before the divorce. Before Greg. Before everything fell apart. It's perfect, the realtor said, leading me through rooms filled with afternoon light. The owners are motivated to sell quickly. I was signing the paperwork when my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Heard you're house hunting. Better check the foundation carefully. Some things aren't as solid as they seem. Maddie. My hand froze mid-signature. How did she... Everything okay? The realtor looked concerned. I forced a smile. Fine. But my fingers shook as I finished signing. That evening, I found Dad in his garage, tinkering with his old motorcycle. Someone's feeding them information about me. He wiped his hands on a rag. You think someone at work? Has to be. Maddie knew about the house before I even made an offer. Could be the realtor's office. Small town, people talk. I showed him the text. This isn't just talk. They're trying to scare me out of buying it. Which means you're doing exactly what you should be. He handed me a wrench. Help me with this bolt while we figure out our next move. The familiar rhythm of working on the bike calmed my nerves. Until my phone buzzed again, Mom this time. Greg says you're making a mistake. The market's unstable. We could help you find something more suitable. I threw the wrench down with a clang. They're trying to control where I live now. Reagan, Dad started, but I was already dialing Mum's number. She answered on the first ring. Honey, I'm so glad you called. Stop interfering in my life. We're worried about you, making such a big decision without proper guidance. We? The word tasted bitter. You mean Greg's worried about me buying a house 3 blocks from his territory? That's not fair. He's just trying to what? Control me, manipulate me, like he does with you. Silence crackled over the line. Then, Maddie told me what you said to her, about her manipulating her way into our family. Of course she did. And let me guess, she cried while telling you. She's 15, Reagan. You're the adult. Exactly, I'm an adult, making adult decisions about my life, decisions you and Greg don't get to influence anymore. The next day, I signed the final paperwork. As I walked out of the realtor's office, keys in hand, another text arrived. Greg, this time. Your mother's devastated by your behavior. Is that what you wanted? To hurt her? Maybe we should all sit down and discuss your obvious issues with authority. I stared at the message, something cold and determined settling in my chest. Opening my camera, I took a photo of the house keys and sent it to all 3 of them, Mum, Greg, and Maddie. My house, my rules, my life, stay away. Blocking their numbers felt like cutting strings I didn't know were still attached. Dad found me later on Alice's porch, staring at the sunset. You okay, kiddo? They're going to try something. I turned to him. This isn't over. Probably not. He sat beside me. But this time you're ready for them. Alice brought out coffee, her eyes sharp despite her gentle movements. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. I looked at my new house keys, thinking about blue shutters and afternoon light and rooms that would hold only the people I chose to let in. They want to play games? I stood up, pocketing the keys. Let them try. I'm done being the piece they push around the board. But as I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, in a house with perfect lawn and gleaming windows, Greg and Maddie were already planning their next move. And Mom would let them, just like always. The housewarming party was supposed to be my moment of triumph. I'd sent Mom a separate invitation, just her, explicitly stated. No Greg, no Maddie. A final chance to choose me. I should have known better. Their SUV pulled into my driveway just as Dad and Alice were helping set up the buffet. 3 car doors slammed in quick succession. Don't, Dad warned, but I was already moving toward the door. Mom entered first, clutching a wrapped package. Honey, I know you said, get out. My voice sounded strange, distant. All of you. Now, Reagan. Greg stepped forward, all practice charm. We're here to support your achievement, though I must say this neighborhood seems a bit ambitious for your current position. Maddie snickered, running her finger along my new windowsill. Cute dollhouse. Reagan, Mom pleaded, they're family. The word hit like a physical blow. Behind me, other guests were arriving, co-workers, friends, neighbors, all witnesses to this invasion. Family? I grabbed the package from Mum's hands, hurling it against the wall. It shattered, revealing a crystal vase, probably expensive, definitely manipulative. Was it family when Greg convinced you to kick me out? When Maddie destroyed my clothes? When you chose them over me again and again? That's enough. Greg's mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. Your mother's been more than patient with your theatrics. Either accept all of us or what? I stepped closer. You'll manipulate her into cutting me off completely. Too late. You already did that. I never, Mum started. Save it. I turned to Maddie. Touch anything in my house, and I'll have you arrested for trespassing. She smiled, sweet as poison. But Mum said we could stay. Right, Mom. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Mom, really looked at her, and saw something break behind her eyes. Just for a little while, she whispered. We think, you shouldn't be alone in a new house. The betrayal was so complete it felt almost beautiful. Dad, I called out, not taking my eyes off Mom. Can you show these trespassers out? With pleasure. He stepped forward, but Greg blocked his path. This is family business, Tom. Stay out of it. Family? Dad laughed. You wouldn't know family if it hit you in your smug face. Please, Mom begged. Can't we all just… No. The word came out sharp enough to cut. We can't, because this isn't about family. It's about control. It always has been. Maddie moved toward the stairs. I want to see my room. Your room? Something snapped inside me. I grabbed her arm, harder than I meant to. There is no your room. This is my house. Reagan, Mom rushed forward. You're hurting her. Like you hurt me? I released Maddie, who immediately burst into theatrical tears. Get out, all of you, before I call the police. You wouldn't dare, Greg started, but I was already dialing. Yes, I'd like to report trespassers at 1542 Maple Street. The change was immediate. Greg's face darkened with rage. Mom collapsed into tears. Maddie stopped crying, her eyes calculating. You'll regret this, Greg hissed, steering them toward the door. Come on, Beth. She's made her choice. Mom paused in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Reagan, please. Go. I turned my back, unable to watch her choose them again. The door closed. Through the window, I watched their SUV pull away. My guest stood frozen, witnessing the aftermath of a family explosion. Show's over, I announced, my voice hollow. Party's cancelled. Later, after everyone left, I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and shattered crystal. Dad and Alice had offered to stay, but I needed to be alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. We only wanted to help. You'll understand someday when you have your own family. I stared at the message until the words blurred, thinking about family and choices and the price of freedom. Then I blocked her number, just like all the others. The house felt too big suddenly, too empty. But it was mine. Every lonely, hard-won inch of it. And I'd burn it down myself before I'd let them take it from me. The Seattle project was supposed to take 2 weeks. InnovateX's biggest client, my biggest opportunity. I'd left my house in Dad's care, knowing he'd check on it daily. I should have known better. His call came at 3 a.m. on my 10th day away. Reagan, you need to come home, now. What's wrong? There's lights on in your house, and Maddie's car in the driveway. I caught the first flight back, arriving as dawn broke over my neighborhood. The sight stopped me cold. Curtains I didn't choose hanging in my windows, different furniture visible through the glass, and Mum's SUV parked beside Maddie's car. The locks had been changed. My key wouldn't turn. I pressed the doorbell, blood roaring in my ears. Greg answered, wearing a bathrobe like he owned the place. Ah, Reagan, we wondered when you'd show up. Get out of my house, he smiled, that practiced, patronizing smile. Actually, Beth and I have been talking. Given your unstable behavior, we felt it best to provide Maddie with a stable living environment while she finishes high school. The neighborhood's so much better for her here. This is my house. Each word felt like glass in my throat. I own it. Do you? He produced a document. Because according to this, your mother co-signed your mortgage. Something about your age and credit history requiring a guarantor. The memory hit like a punch, Mom insisting on helping, me too proud of qualifying to read the fine print. Where is she? Right here. Mom appeared behind him, pale but determined. Honey, we're trying to help. You're too young to manage a house alone, and Maddie needs… What I need, Maddie called from inside, is my own bathroom. I'm thinking of painting it pink. Something snapped. I shoved past Greg, entering my own house like an intruder. The changes were everywhere. My furniture moved to the garage, my photos replaced with theirs, my life erased room by room. You can't do this. I turned to Mom. You can't just… Actually, we can. Greg's voice hardened. As co-signer, Beth has equal claim to this property, and as her husband, you have nothing. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. He smiled again. We'll explain how concerned we are about your mental state, how you've been harassing Maddie, how your mother, as co-signer, agreed to let us live here for Maddie's well-being. Mom, I looked at her, really looked at her. Is this what you want? To destroy everything I've built? She wouldn't meet my eyes. We're trying to keep this family together. Family? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make her flinch. Let me show you family. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed the folder I'd hidden behind the loose baseboard before leaving, the one containing every text, every email, every piece of evidence of their manipulation. Here's Maddie admitting she ruined my clothes. Here's Greg threatening me. Here's you, Mom, choosing them over me again and again. I spread the papers on the counter. Still want to discuss mental stability with the police? Greg's face darkened. You vindictive little... Get out! I held up my phone, showing the recording app running. Now, before I send all of this to a lawyer. Maddie appeared, face twisted with rage. You can't make us... Watch me. The next hour was chaos. Threats, tears, promises of legal action. But in the end, they left. Mom paused at the door, looking smaller somehow. We only wanted... I know what you wanted. I didn't look at her. But this is my house, my life, and you're not welcome in either anymore. After they drove away, I sat on my porch steps, surrounded by the wreckage of their brief occupation. Dad's car pulled up, then Alice's. You okay, kiddo? Dad sat beside me. I looked at my front door, thinking about locks and laws and the price of trust. No, I said, but I will be. Alice squeezed my shoulder. Sometimes the strongest walls aren't the ones around your house. I nodded, watching the sun rise over my neighborhood. My house. My choice. My victory. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered to my office at Innovate X. Mum's handwriting on the envelope, still familiar after all these months of silence. I didn't open it. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where my grandfather, her father, was buried. I hadn't been since the funeral, but something pulled me there, the weight of the unopened letter heavy in my pocket. The headstone was well maintained. Fresh flowers lay at its base, Mum's weekly ritual unchanged since I was a child. I sat in the grass beside it, finally breaking the seal. Dear Reagan, Greg left. He took Maddie and moved to California. I let them go. I understand if you don't want to see me. But I needed you to know you were right about everything. Love, Mom. A shadow fell across the paper. Alice stood there, holding her own bouquet of flowers. I thought I might find you here. She settled beside me with surprising grace for her age. Your father mentioned Beth's letter. Did you know? About Greg leaving? Small town. She arranged her flowers carefully. People talk about how Beth's been staying with her sister, trying to sort things out. I folded the letter, creasing it precisely. She wants me to forgive her. No. Alice touched my hand. She's telling you she finally forgave herself. There's a difference. The wind rustled through nearby trees, carrying the scent of approaching rain. I thought about Mom, alone in her sister's guest room, finally free of Greg's influence but trapped by her own choices. I'm not ready to see her. Nobody said you had to be. Alice stood, brushing grass from her skirt. Come on, I need your help with something. She drove us to her house, leading me to the garage where Dad's old motorcycle still sat, half restored from our weekend projects. Your father mentioned you've been avoiding this lately. She handed me a wrench. Sometimes fixing broken things helps us understand which parts we want to keep. I worked on the bike until sunset, hands covered in grease, mind surprisingly quiet. When Dad arrived with takeout, he didn't mention the letter or Mom. Instead, he grabbed a wrench and joined me. Remember when I taught you to ride? You mean when I crashed into Mrs. Peterson's rosebush? The memory brought an unexpected laugh. Mum was so angry. She was scared, he corrected gently. You were bleeding, and she couldn't fix it. The parallel wasn't lost on me. I wiped my hands on a rag, studying the bike's gleaming parts, some new, some original, all working together despite their differences. I'm keeping the house, I said finally, but I'm changing everything inside. New paint, new furniture. Fresh start? Alice asked from her perch by the workbench. No, more like choosing what stays and what goes, on my terms this time. That weekend, I painted my living room the exact shade of blue I'd always wanted. Dad helped move furniture while Alice supervised, offering commentary on color theory and feng shui. The doorbell rang as we finished. Through the window, I saw Mom standing on the porch, no car in sight. She must have walked from her sister's house. She didn't look up, didn't try to see inside, just placed something on the welcome mat and turned away. I opened the door after she left. There, carefully wrapped, sat my grandmother's crystal vase, the one she'd brought to the housewarming, the one I'd shattered. Perfectly restored, almost invisible seams marking where it had broken. Someone put a lot of work into fixing that, Alice observed. I placed the vase on my new windowsill, where afternoon light caught its edges. The fractures were still visible if you knew where to look, but they didn't make it any less beautiful. Some things, I said, are worth the effort of repair. Others need to stay broken. Dad squeezed my shoulder, understanding in his silence. Alice nodded, wisdom in her eyes. Outside, rain began to fall, washing away the last traces of summer. I watched droplets trace patterns on my window, thinking about mothers and daughters, broken vases and motorcycle parts, and all the different ways we choose to heal. The vase caught the fading light, its cracks telling stories of destruction and repair, of choices made and unmade, of a future built on carefully chosen pieces of the past.